Well, hello and welcome to another Ask the Author interview with Literati. In my book club this month, we've been reading a book that is very special to me called The Art of Pollination. This book was written by Martin Flanagan and tells the incredible story of a very good friend of mine and a powerful force of nature, to say the least, Jane Tewson. And today I'm so pleased to be joined by both Marty and Jane, all the way from Australia, to discuss the stories behind this story. So let's dive right in. So Jane, we've known each other now for longer than I would care to admit. I think we were both in our early 20s when you came to my tiny little hovel of an office and asked me to consider funding the overheads for your new charity. And it was impossible to say no to you then, as it is impossible to say no to you today. I just wonder whether if your memories are better than mine, whether you can share the memories of how we met.
Yeah, I can remember a great lawyer, Colin, introduced me to you, and it was exactly 40 years ago. And I remember visiting you on your houseboat. I think it was down in Chelsea. And I think I had a 10-minute meeting with you, and I came in and you said, well, what do you want? What are you doing? So I tried to tell you, and I always find it hard to get my words out. And then you said, okay, I'll fund your rage. Off you go. I'll do it for 3 years. And I can remember just exploding out of the houseboat and having to get the tube back to see some friends to tell them. And I just didn't know what to do because I was so excited. There were no mobile phones. I was kind of running up and down the train. I tried to sit down, and I have this real memory of people must have been looking at me, bouncing up and down on my seat because I was just busting with excitement. And your trust and support was everything. And it was such a confidence booster to me. And I think you'll probably remember I was very shy and I used to hang my head on one side. But I had this fierce, it was this energy in my veins. I knew what I was doing was right. And you also obviously did through instinct. And it just meant so much to me. And when I think of that moment, I feel all that energy and just want to let rip. So thank you very much. It was a very special day meeting you.
Well, it's been delightful ever since. So I think that day you then went on to work on creating Comic Relief and Red Nose Day, which I think most people have come across in one form or another, which has now raised over £1 billion. I mean, could you just tell us a little bit about this journey and how it became such an iconic charity movement?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the most wondrous journey. I've had the best life, and even today I'm puzzled about how it happened. I mean, I was a young kid from the country, and as I mentioned earlier, I just had this passion in my veins to change charity and change it from being something you did to people to something you did with people. And before Comic Relief was launched, I was involved with producing a few live shows, working with people with Down syndrome, but it was definitely the birth of the Red Nose that escalated everything. And like all great ideas, I think all the good ideas, and I haven't had any of them, they've always been the people I work with. It came when we sat round a table of people, extraordinary lives. Rick Mail from the Young Ones was there, Richard Curtis, and we were talking about, could we have an emblem for a day of comedy? And Peter Crossin just drew a red nose on the end of his nose. And that's how Red Nose Day was born, and it was the perfect emblem to start our journey. And I think Richard Curtis was wholly responsible for the comedy, and I was more focused on the needs in Africa and the UK, the vision of where we might invest the money. And I was a real obstinate force about insisting that people were given their own voice, that we didn't talk for people, that the organisations that we supported in Africa were run by African people, that the organisations in the UK we supported that were working with people with disabilities had people with disabilities on their board. That was just absolutely crucial to me, because that old thing of giving to people, I think those days are over. We need to involve the people that we want to help. So that's a very quick, hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, I wish more people had thought that way 40 years ago. But anyway, they're catching up finally, hopefully.
Slowly.
Marty and Jane, you both bonded over your shared passion for upholding human rights and for creating social change. Marty, can you tell us maybe a little bit about your friendship and how it led to writing this book?
Well, in the early 2000s, I was in South Africa and I was confronted with the issue of torture, and that had a major effect on me. And I was back in Melbourne and I gave a lecture on torture at the Centre for Survivors of Torture in Melbourne. And Jane was there and we met afterwards. And the first thing I knew about her just was that she was this friendly presence. And that's the thing I know about her now. She's a wonderful friend. And she wasn't pushy. She was real. But she understood and she wanted to be involved and do something. And I just think that as a person, Jane is an intriguing combination of the extraordinary and the ordinary. And I think it's her ordinariness which enables her to connect with people across gender, across race, across culture. But she is, in other ways, completely novel and unique. She's brave, she's resilient, and yeah, I suppose the major thing for me in doing the book with Jane was that we ended up with a great friendship. We're a bit like an old married couple by the end of it, because we'd had a few big differences, but she said to me earlier she was on for the robust conversation, and she is. So yeah, a very lovely person, but someone who's exceptionally good at what she does.
Oh, lovely. We sometimes with Literati throw in questions from the audience, so if I may hit off with one from Melissa, who's got a question for Jane, and that is, how do you refuel? And do you have any downtime? And if so, could you say what it looks like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be honest, my work is full of such joy, and my life, that the fuel tank is really low, but I do get downtime. I'm really lucky. I have a great relationship with my husband. He's my friend and he's my lover, and we've got beautiful children. So I love having time with them. And as we approach the autumn of our years, it's getting even better. So having better with him and better with the children. So as much time as possible we spend together. But also I walk, and I love my garden. So I've got a tiny little garden here in Melbourne, but it's all edible now at the front. So I've got my oranges and my lemons and all my herbs. And that again gives me great pleasure. And in fact, today, before I left home to come out here, I put my hands in the dirt and immediately felt, because I'm obviously nervous about talking with you today, and I immediately relaxed. So yeah, my fuel tank is very rarely low. Too much to do.
They yeah, well, I know if I ever come to Australia, I'm grabbed and either taken to a prison, taken out into the bush, and struggling through thousands of flies to get a mouthful of food into me. Taken to injection centres in Sydney. There's always something fascinating and interesting that you take me on.
And what I love about you is when you do come on those visits with us, you go away and you take action. And that's what we need people to do, not just sit back. We can't accept the unacceptable. And that's what's so great about working with you and Marty. We're doing.
You teach us, and and I think immediately as a result of that, you're taking us to the prison and talking to the inmates, we ended up trying to take on as many people and give them a second chance as we could in the Virgin group of companies. And Obviously, injection centers, again, learned about that, and we've been trying to push that in other countries. And so, yeah, but all of it's from your initial teaching. Another question for both of you. I mean, during the year you spent working together, were there any memorable moments that you can share with us all? Let's say, Marty, why didn't you hit off on that one?
Well, the book is really just a collection of memories. They were all memorable moments. And that's the thing about being around Jane, as you were just saying. I mean, that was a very good list that you gave then of the sort of experiences you have when you're with her. But I do remember one in particular. I was at Port Phillip Prison. I worked in the jail in my 20s, and I've visited a few since then. And I know how powerful prison cultures are. And Jane and you, Richard, had become involved to help a woman warder called Anne Hooker, who was trying to set up a youth centre to protect the younger prisoners from the culture of the older prisoners. And I thought that was an important and valuable thing to do. And because of you and Jane, it happened. But as we were leaving the prison, and it's a very unusual prison, it's over a huge area, and it's these sort of houses or these buildings that are all separated, and they're all just surrounded by barbed wire. And as Jane and I were leaving, we heard this long male hoarse cry, and it could have been from an act of violence, and it was deeply unnerving. And at that moment, Jane said to me, and we were both unnerved by it, and she said, my sons could have ended up in here, as in, drink driving or something. And I said, well, so could have I. And it was just a moment where we both knew exactly what one another felt. And in the book, I ended up actually comparing her to Elizabeth Fry, the Georgian prison reformer, both similar women, both similar backgrounds, both middle-class women, both believe in taking people to see, to witness, to feel events. And that was really part of writing the book for me. I wrote it for my granddaughter, my 11-year-old granddaughter, because I wanted her to know there is an obstinate force for good in the world, and people like Jane embody that. That's why I wrote the book.
Jane, your go.
Well, Marty, I can't remember how this happened. This is a dyslexic moment, but one day I started to call you Bottle Top. Do you remember where that came from? Because I got everything upside down and twisted around.
Well, where that came from was that I've spent a lot of my time with Indigenous people, and I've learned a lot off them, and it's been a very big part of my life. And a group of Aboriginal men, traditional Aboriginal men, came to Melbourne. English would have been their third or fourth language. And I was asked to show them around, and that made me a story man. And they gave me a name, which I was very proud of. They called me Money Top, after the $2 coin, which has got a very famous old Aboriginal man, old bearded Aboriginal man on it. So it was a great honour. So Jane reads the book, and she says, I love that name the Aboriginal people gave you, Bottle Top. Said Money Top. Anyway, we both liked Bottle Top. It sounded like something out of the Goon Show. So we stuck with it. So now I'm Bottle Top to Jane.
Very nice.
Yeah.
There's another one of the contributors, and hopefully they're online at the moment, is called Jeremy. And he's got a question for you, Martin. He said, in the book, you discuss why it's important to tackle extremism by finding our shared values. Have you always felt this way, or has this been influenced by the global politics over the past few years?
I have always felt this way, and I have been alarmed by the trend in global politics over the past decade. And I always go back to that that poem of W.B. Yeats's that he wrote during the 20s and early 30s, when Europe was heading towards radicalisation and militarisation. And his vision of a culture in trouble is one in which the centre cannot hold, where the worst are full of passion and intensity and the best lack all conviction. And that I fear is where, that is the territory I think we're hovering on the edge of. And yeah, I believe I'm attracted to the centre, the Buddhist idea of the middle way, and the work for people who believe in that is now greater than it's ever been. And again, that's something Jane does, because she will literally work with anyone if they're of good faith and share her aim. So you do meet an amazing cross-section of people with her. And one of them that I met, that, you know, one of the things I won't forget about working with Jane was when she brought out Martin Luther King's son, and he gave a speech, and one of the things he said that I think is incredibly important to remember, Martin Luther King didn't have big victories, he had little victories, and little victories matter. And again, that's what Jane does. She just does little victories, little victory, little victory, little victory. But that's what makes it healthy.
Beautiful words, just like the beautiful words in your book. And I love how your words really get to the heart of what makes Jane such a powerful organizer, such a powerful campaigner, such a powerful person. From what you observed, could we, well, I know we could, but what could we all learn from Jane to create, you know, what could we learn from Jane to create a more meaningful impact on the world, do you think?
Well, the first thing about Jane is, to me, is she's genuine. And, you know, you can fake that, and a lot of people do fake it, but she actually is. And she's got a lovely energy that accompanies her because of that. But she's not just that. She's genuine, but she's also very knowing. She's smart. And she has created a method which allows her to retain her genuineness and be genuine. And that involves her system of total transparency. That didn't make her easy to work with, because when you're writing a book, it's like flying a plane, and it's a big thing to let one other person into the cockpit, which I did when I let Jane. But what I didn't understand was that meant Jane would let another 100 people into the cockpit, and I would be fighting for the controls of the plane thereafter. But that William Blake, the English poet, he said, there are 3 phases to life: innocence, experience, and organised innocence. And if I had to hold up an example of someone who has lived that and is capable of creating organised innocence, Jane would be the person.
Again, lovely words again. Jane, Igniting Change is your deliberately tiny charity in Australia that really goes after the forgotten people, I would say, and that's documented throughout the book. The charity, it works to connect people, it works to start conversations, it works to give a voice to people facing injustice. Do you want to just sort of give some examples of the problems you're tackling at the moment? Maybe, yeah, over and above what I've already said, or including some of those.
Yeah, I mean, Australia is a fantastic country, and I became an Australian citizen a couple of months ago. And yes, on the one hand, it's the land of opportunity, but on the other, it really breaks my heart for the huge numbers of people, and increasingly numbers of people, who are doing it really tough. And the issues we work with, people who are homeless, huge mental health challenges at the moment. I mean, we lock kids up here at the age of 10. And it's unbelievable. This is when kids should be at school and they should be playing, but to lock them up. But I think the really big issues that I see all around us at the moment are that people aren't curious any longer. They don't listen, they don't ask. And so many people think they know the answers to these challenges, but they're people who haven't even experienced them. So my real worry at the moment is the lack of curiosity amongst the community. And I think it's a global issue. I'd love to know what you think. But I find that, you know, when I go out and we visit the prison, or we visit people who are living on the street and homeless, or we visit people who are drug addicted, they're so happy to see us. They say, you're the only, you know, nobody else comes and asks us. And I was talking to somebody who was ice addicted, and he said to me, Jane, no kid dreams of becoming a drug addict. And that really resonates with me. So not sure I've answered the question. We've got a lot of work to do, but the first thing is, I think I just love people to ask more and not to assume, and to see the person and not their issue.
I mean, I think your assistant, who, you know, was addicted to ice, I mean, she is the the best example of somebody being able to get their life back. I mean, just an extraordinary woman. And if that was the only thing you'd done in your life, that would be that would be really worthwhile. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about her?
Yeah, I think that, picking up on that, what's really important to us as an organisation is to have lots of lived experience around us. So our office is a little hub, and today we could have somebody who is a homeless who wants to come in and write their CV. We could have a young Sudanese group coming in here, or some of the frontline workers who just come here to get respite. But they keep us on their toes, and they're all such inspirational forces, and they're so humble. And they're doing the work. I wish I could do the work that they do, and I can't. So second best is finding those unsung heroes and giving them all the support we can, which is not just financial. It is about your home and your office being open to them. They're welcome here anytime. They can come and have a cup of tea, and we listen. And of course, we learn so much from them.
So Kathy would like to know, from your upbringing, what most helped you in your work? What was the one thing from your upbringing?
Oh, I was so incredibly privileged to have had a really happy childhood with lots of play in it. Mum and Dad were non-judgmental, and I grew up very much seeing the person, not the label. And we had lots of freedom, lots of fun, lots of love. And Mum would always say, Jane, anything's possible. And I think most importantly, they gave me an instinct, and I think that's probably the only thing I've got going for me, because I've got I can smell things very quickly, and I think, Richard, you're the same as me, and that's just such a gift. I know, you know, as soon as you go through the door, when you meet someone, whether that vibe is right, and I absolutely trust it. So I love that I have this instinct.
Yeah, I think we've both been lucky with our upbringings. It's funny, on the instinct front, I've always thought I was right about instinct with people, and more as I've got older, I've actually, you know, especially if I think negatively about somebody in the first 2 or 3 minutes of meeting them, and then give it a bit more time, I found it surprising how those first instincts were mistaken, and so I've now changed my approach on that, and just being a bit more careful. But
yeah, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. You just have to go beyond that first. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, because some people are you know, incredibly shy, or whatever it is. But yeah, Martin, talking about shyness. Talking about shyness. Jane is famously shy about attention, about people praising her, and I'm sure she's squirming as I'm talking to you. I mean, how on earth could you write a whole book about somebody who wants no attention whatsoever?
Well, that's your best question so far. Yes, Jane was difficult. Jane thought the book was about everyone else, and everyone else thought the book was about Jane. And Jane, and you just, when you work with Jane, I actually said to her husband, it reminded me of a flood once I saw in central Queensland, where this river had gone into flood and it just swept through the town. and they'd pick these old weatherboard houses up and carried them a couple of 100 metres and then dropped them at a different angle. And that's how I felt by the time I'd finished working with Jane. But she was the river in flood and I was the old weatherboard house. But she doesn't, her memory is of a completely different character to any memory I've ever met. She lives in the present. Her whole energy is directed to the present. And so if you bother her with questions about the past and even her glorious successes in the past, you could get any answer. And in the end, I gave up with quite a number of things, trying to find them out. And when you interview her, the answers you get may be only tangentially related to the questions you ask. And in the end, I just ended up just recording her thought processes. I stopped trying to order them. So they were difficulties, but as I said, she's got this lovely energy, and every time I met her, the whole thing took off again and felt good, and off I'd go again. But it says on the cover it only took 1 year. The book took 3 years, or nearly 3. It was very difficult, but the reason I did it was because she kept on showing me, taking me to stories of good news, and I feel good about that. I feel good about, the world. When the world is better than I imagine it, I feel good, and they're the stories that I want to tell, and they're the stories I've always tried to tell as a journalist, and she just kept taking me to those stories. So that was the reward.
Yeah, well, we're both privileged to have spent time with her.
Thank you.
And yeah, we've obviously been delighted to support you and work with you with Virgin, through Virgin Unite for many years. Apart from maybe our personal relationships, what do you think about that partnership that works so well? And I'm sure you'll say Jean would be the first thing that would come to my mind. But anyway, what would be the first thing that works so well about
I think Jean, and look what we've got in our office.
Is that your dartboard?
It comes from that gift we gave you once from Cal, a quilt activist who works here. I love working with Virgin Unite, and I think Jean, yes, but Virgin Unite doesn't accept the unacceptable. And we work here in Australia with extraordinarily generous supporters. They're big thinkers, and they love nothing more than being introduced to global issues. And led by you and Virgin Unite, because you're so curious and you do listen, and you also, like us, like to meet the people and feel the issues. And I love nothing more than when you arrive in Australia and you ask where to. And you mentioned the prison earlier on, and I don't know whether our work is with one little tiny youth unit here in Victoria. You take that back and you employ people through Virgin Trains, but also you think really big. So the amount of work that you put into ending the death penalty was utterly inspiration. But I hope maybe a tiny little bit of inspiration might have come from all those years ago when we first visited the prisons. And I think that it seems that we fit together like a jigsaw. I mean, Igniting Change is working. We are small and we pick up the thorny issues. And Virgin Unite is big, you're bold, you take on the issues of the world. And if Igniting Change can play some little role in supporting that, we feel very proud to. You play a huge role in our life, in that you, and indeed many of the Virgin team, come and spend time with us. You come and spend time and you immerse yourself in the issues. You've been out to Central Australia. Many of your team have been out to Central Australia. You spent time on the streets, and it just seems a bit like a jigsaw. Does that sum it up, Richard? This is where I'm not very good with words.
And
Jean, I mean, there's no doubt that your team, led by Jean Olawang, who's the president of Virgin Unite, I think she is the global thinker and doer of all time. Through COVID, she's absolutely been on it. And she really feels the pain of people. She really gets to where others don't go to. And I hope in a way, well, she and I talk most weeks, and I hope that I'm a sort of mentor with her. We mentor each other.
You're a formidable couple. Yeah, I was just thinking that I remember another thing one of the prisoners that said to us when we visited the Melbourne prison, and how he'd been released a few months earlier, and he just said, you know, when they release us, we might have been in prison for 3 or 4 years. They don't drive us into Melbourne and drop us off. They just release us outside the prison, a long way outside Melbourne. So the first thing we have to do is hitch into town. We've got no money whatsoever. We've got nowhere to stay, and yes, we it's almost impossible to get a job because we've been in prison. Nobody wants to employ us, and so we end up back in prison again. Anyway, there were so many stories that the kids told us like that were very important in getting us thinking and seeing how things could be done differently. In a matter of light relief, Marty, I think you actually had some time to go to an art gallery with Jane, and if I remember the story, she suggested that you lie on the floor and look up at the paintings so that you could see them differently. You never really say whether you did lie on the floor, and maybe you could give me any other examples that Jane challenged your way of thinking in a slightly unusual way.
Well, I wasn't game enough to lie on the floor at the National Gallery of Victoria.
You're worried about whether you get up again, or?
But it was a very Jane-esque moment. Yeah, Jane challenged my thinking in all sorts of ways. One of the themes running through the book is her relationship with her mother, and they had this ability to communicate telepathically. They called it widging, and it's the sort of thing, like one of the intriguing things for me about Jane, having been to Central Australia with her, is how well she fitted in with Aboriginal people. And that sort of communication, they have lots of stories about that sort of communication. And the story in the book, which is most powerful, is when Jane's literally dying in a refugee camp in South Sudan, and her mother and father are on a yacht off the Turkish coast, and her mother turns to her father and says, Jane's dying, I have to help her. And for the next several days doesn't sleep and just directs energy. And in the end, Jane gets out just and survives. And so she exists on that level as well. But she's also, in a word, she's also an incredibly sensible person, and she gives great advice. And the other thing she did was, just because she will work, because of the way she works, she brought me into contact with people I've not had a lot to do with, of whom you are an example, Richard. So because of Jane, I ended up reading a number of your books and becoming acquainted with your ideas and your way of doing things, which I really didn't know anything about. Also Radhik Saleh, another highly successful businessman who's also a philanthropist. So she took me to all sorts of other places, and yeah, so that was why I was happy to spend 3 years of my life writing the book.
I'm so glad you did. This wonderful book, The Art of Pollination, Jane, it sheds light on some of the really difficult times in your life. I mean, I was struggling with dyslexia, which I'm only too familiar with. failing school exams, which I'm only too familiar with as well, on a personal basis. And then, as he just mentioned, contact pneumonia, malaria in Sudan, and you know, and almost dying. I mean, when you have these setbacks and challenges in your life, what have you learned from those?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has setbacks, and I think life's like that, and I've had some. But I've also been really lucky, as later in life, my dyslexia, for example, has turned into a great strength. I realise it's special to be able to see the world a little bit differently. And I don't look back. I very much enjoy the moment. And I think life's short, and it's the most wonderful thing, and really want to make the most of it and have less judgment. So yeah, I've had difficult times, but I'm in the here and now and loving every minute of it, and feel enriched by what I've learned so far in my life. Makes it a very enjoyable and special one.
Yeah, absolutely. And both of you have touched so many people through your work. I know Jane will continue doing doing wonderful things, looking after other people until she drops. But what have you got any thoughts for the next 30 years, both of you, or the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the things you'd really like to do?
I think for me, I just want more love, more fun. I get much more out than I put in. I hope I become more curious and I become a better listener. Keep igniting change by extraordinary lives. I mean, that's happening very much today, you, me, and Marty. And what's really important to me is I don't want to go to my grave knowing that philanthropy hasn't changed, because I think it still is very much about giving to people. It's not about working with people. And, I feel in the autumn of my years, but still 40 years on, I'm banging on about the same things. And I guess, and I gave this a little bit of thought, my bucket list is, I would love people to work with people, not give to them. Include and listen to people with lived experience. Always seek them out and have them close to you. See the person, not the issue. See the person, not their label. Involve people facing the issues in all aspects of everything that you do. And I'm really excited because I'm taking more time off to have fun with my husband. And in a couple of months, we're taking off to the remote top end of Australia with swags and ready for an adventure, traveling right across the top. And my biggest fear is crocodiles, but I'm going to have to get over that.
I can see you'll be rescuing the crocodiles, or releasing them as quickly as you can find them trapped somewhere. Anyway, thanks,
Richard,
Jane.
in truth, just one thing I have created the very best job in the world for myself. It's really selfish. I'm very lucky. I love what I do, and I don't believe I'm a particularly good person at all. I've just found my niche and absolutely love spending time with people and watching people blossom. Usually it just takes, as you know, through what you've done employing people coming out of the prison system, you only need to give people a very little when they haven't got much, and they can really shine. And we need more people like you in the world to say, yeah, I'm going to give people a go, because when you give people a go, it works. We know it works. You have to put a little extra support around it, but it's great being able to do that.
Oh, sure. And Marty, I hope you're going to find another Jane and use your next book to continue to inspire the world. Have you already found somebody or a victim?
Well, yeah. Well, I always go back to a quote I read by an English poet called DJ Enright, and he said, "Poetry, a belief in poetry is a belief that it is the finest and most efficient vehicle we have yet invented for conveying such courage and wisdom as our race has painfully acquired." And I've spent the last 40 years trying to tell those stories that convey such courage and wisdom as our race has painfully acquired. That's what I do. That's what I'll do till the day I die. I think that, you know, we live in a culture where our young people are being consumed by anxiety. The elders in our culture have a responsibility to tell stories that give young people hope and direction. And if I have a gift, it's for knowing when I'm with someone who's got those stories, and then I'm honoured and privileged to act as a medium for those stories. And so, yeah, I've written another book since the Jane one, and I've started another one after that, as well as writing odd articles.
Wonderful.
So,
well, look, thanks, Marty, and thanks, Jane. It's been an absolute delight, and look forward to meeting you in person, Marty, someday. And look forward to doing lots of magic with you, Jane, holding on to your coattails. But anyway, love to you both, and thanks very much to the audience for tuning in. Hope you got a few little gems, and enjoy the book, The Art of Pollination. Really brilliant book. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.